I remember the sound more than the words. Silverware against porcelain, a laugh that wasn't mine, and then my mother's voice. Lacey, this table is for family. There was no scene, no yelling, just that sentence, spoken casually, as if it were a seating preference, not a verdict. My name is Lacey Harper. I'm 29 years old, and I design moments for a living. Weddings, fundraisers, galas, events that look effortless because someone like me spends sleepless nights making sure they do. People hire me to make their most important days perfect. Funny, isn't it? How I could choreograph beauty for strangers, but not peace and within my own family. I was standing, holding a wrapped gift for my father's 60th birthday. Everyone else was already seated at the long mahogany table. My siblings, their spouses, a few family friends. The chairs were full, and somehow there wasn't one for me. The waiter looked at me, unsure, waiting for someone to fix it. No one did. My sister laughed first. You can sit outside, Lacey. It's quieter there anyway. So I did. I sat alone at a patio table under the dim outdoor lamps, pretending to check emails on my phone. Inside, their laughter rose and fell like a song I wasn't invited to hear. It wasn't the first time I'd been invisible around them, but it was the first time I felt empty enough to stop pretending it didn't matter. Before I continue my story, tell me this. Would you sacrifice your happiness to please family, or stand firm to protect yourself? Share your honest opinion in the comments. I truly want to hear your perspective. When the waiter returned hours later with the bill, $4,532 before tip, he placed it in front of me, not them. My siblings glanced over, amused, confident that I'd handle it like always. Event planners pay for things. That's what I do. But that night, I pushed it back, slowly, calmly. "That's not mine," I said. The silence that followed was worth every quiet humiliation I'd ever swallowed. Here at Revenge Bible, we explore real psychological stories of betrayal and justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss our next emotional reckoning. I grew up in a house where perfection was proof of love. My mother, Cynthia, ran our home like a press release. Every photo was filtered, every smile rehearsed. My siblings, Ethan and Mara, fit that image beautifully. Ethan with his tailored ambition, always starting a new venture, though none lasted longer than the checks he borrowed from my parents. Mara, the golden daughter, floated through life in designer dresses, posting quotes about gratitude between sponsored trips. And then there was me, the quiet one, the worker, the one who showed up early, stayed late, and sent the thank you cards nobody remembered to sign. I don't think my family ever meant to hurt me. Their cruelty was subtle, like background noise you stop noticing until silence feels strange. When I started my own event agency, Harper & Co., I thought it might finally earn me a seat at the table, literal or otherwise. And for a while, it seemed to. They bragged about me when it suited them, especially when my name opened up doors. I planned my sister's engagement party, my brother's product launch, even my parents' anniversary gala. They never paid for any of it. "It's good exposure for you," my mother would say, brushing away invoices as if they were dust. Exposure doesn't pay the rent. But love, I thought, might. So I kept showing up, building moments they'd never credit me for. I told myself family debt wasn't the same as money, that it would even out someday. The last job I took for them, the birthday dinner, was supposed to be my way of mending things. My father had been sick earlier that year, and when he recovered, I thought Created Now would soften everyone's edges. I booked the restaurant under my company's name, handled the decor, the seating chart, even the cake. I made sure every detail was elegant and understated like him. He hugged me when I arrived that night. "You always know how to make things look right, Lace," he said. It was the last kind thing anyone said to me that evening. Because when my mother looked down that table and saw one chair short, she didn't see an oversight. She saw an opportunity. For her, hierarchy is the language of control, and that night she spoke it fluently. I've replayed that night too many times, not because of what we did, but because of how calm I felt watching it happen. There's a moment when humiliation crosses into clarity. When you realize you're not being excluded, you're being defined. And I knew then they'd never see me as part of them, not as long as I kept proving my worth. The next morning, I opened my laptop, deleted their event folder, and poured myself a strong cup of coffee. For the first time, I didn't feel like fixing anything. I just wanted to understand how I'd let them turn my kindness into currency. That was the beginning of everything that followed.
The betrayal didn't happen in one moment. It began long before that dinner, long before the waiter placed the bill in front of me. That night was only the final act of a play I didn't realize I'd been cast in years ago. Still, I can pinpoint the exact second it crystallized. It wasn't when they laughed at me. It was when no one noticed I'd gone. After I pushed the bill back, I stood up and walked out to the parking lot. No one called after me. No one asked if I was okay. I remember standing there, the sound of my heels on concrete echoing in the empty night, and realizing how invisible I'd made myself for their comfort. The world didn't end when I walked away. It just got quiet. That kind of quiet isn't peace. It's absence. And it's in that absence that truth finally speaks. When I got home, my phone was buzzing. Texts from my sister, all variations of outrage. "Mom says you embarrassed us. You could have just handled it. You're so dramatic sometimes." No one asked why the bill had my name on it. No one asked if I was okay. My mother's message arrived last. "You've disappointed your father. We'll handle the cost, but I expected better from you." It was the way she phrased it, handle the cost, as if kindness were a ledger entry. I sat on my couch, the city lights outside my window flickering like tired stars, and stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Something colder replaced the ache. A thought that started small, almost tender. What if I stopped letting them define me by what I give? And then another sharper. What if I showed them what happens when I stop giving? Over the next week, the betrayal unfolded in ways only family can manage. Softly, but cutting all the same. Ethan called first, pretending to be diplomatic. "Look, Lace, Mom just feels you could have handled things better. You made a scene." I laughed quietly. "By refusing to pay for your dinner?" He sighed. "It wasn't about the money. It never is, until it is." He hung up soon after, muttering something about me being too sensitive. Then came Mara, her voice sweet and sharp at the same time. "Lacey, people saw. It's bad optics for the family. You made Mom look small." I almost smiled. She didn't need my help with that. I tried to work that week, but every client interaction felt tainted. I'd poured so much of myself into proving I was worth something, to my family, to the world, that I didn't know who I was without their approval. Then, 3 days later, I received an email from the restaurant manager. A bill. Again. Not for $4,532, but for $7,800. It turns out my mother had kindly added post-event charges under my company's name. Additional guests, wine upgrades, customized cake. She had extended the dinner after I left on my business account. The betrayal wasn't emotional anymore. It was professional. She'd used my reputation, my vendor relationships, my company's goodwill, and turned them into leverage. The restaurant thought it was legitimate. They'd worked with me before, trusted me. When I called my mother, my voice didn't shake. Why would you authorize charges under my name? Her tone was measured, almost amused. You're the clanner, dear. You booked it. It's just paperwork. It's theft. Don't be dramatic, Lacey. We're family. That word, family, had always been her shield. And suddenly it made me sick. That night I sat at my desk, opened my old client journals, and flipped through pages of notes I'd written over the years. Sketches, invoices, then their lists. Each one was a record of trust. And every signature, every line item, reminded me of one truth I'd ignored. I'd built something real. Something mine. And they'd treated it like a personal credit card. I stayed up until dawn, watching the sky turn pale gray, thinking about every time I'd saved them from embarrassment. Every time I'd fixed what they broke. This time, I wouldn't fix it. This time, I'd let them own what they'd done. Not through confrontation. My mother thrived on spectacle. But through exposure. Quiet. Clean. And devastatingly public. I didn't know it yet, but my revenge had already begun. Not as anger, but as clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop asking for a seat at a table that was never meant for you. I used to believe silence was safety. Now I know. It was strategy.
I didn't plan to dig. I only wanted answers. But answers have a way of multiplying once you start looking for them. It began with a single email. The restaurant invoice. A line I hadn't noticed before. Authorized by C. Harper via Harper & Co. account. My mother had used my business authorization code, the same one I gave vendors for emergencies. I stared at that signature block, my name beside hers, and felt a chill crawl up my spine. How long had she been using my credentials? I opened my accounting software, then my business inbox, then my archived messages. By midnight, I'd found 12 separate charges linked to my family in the past 2 years. Floral arrangements, private transport, catering deposits, small amounts that didn't raise suspicion, but together, nearly $18,000. Each one approved per L. Harper, each one tied to an event with my mother's name attached. It wasn't just entitlement. It was a pattern. The first emotion wasn't anger. It was embarrassment for not seeing it sooner, for defending them every time someone hinted that my family used me. I used to tell clients, family is the best kind of chaos. Now that line made me sick. By 2 a.m., my desk was covered in printed receipts and highlighted notes. It looked like evidence. And in a way, it was. I called Amelia the next morning, my accountant and oldest friend. She listened quietly as I explained. Lace, that's fraud, she said finally. Her tone wasn't dramatic, just factual. They've been signing under your business entity. If the IRS audits, you're liable. The words hung in the air like smoke. You're liable. For their dinners, their parties, their image. I pressed my palm against my forehead. What do I do? She hesitated. First, document everything. Then freeze the axis. And, Lacey? Yes. Don't warn them. Just act. By noon, I'd changed my authorization codes, revoked vendor permissions, and placed every family-linked transaction into a secure folder, labeled simply proof. Then I did something small but symbolic. I opened my company website and removed the family gallery section. It used to display photos from their events, smiles, champagne, a curated image of unity. Gone. In its place, I uploaded a new portfolio. My real clients, my real work. For the first time, the homepage looked like mine. Later that evening, I drove past my parents' house. The lights were on, laughter drifting through the open window. From the street, it looked warm, golden, almost cinematic. And I realized how deceptive lighting can be. You can make anything look perfect if you dim the shadows just right. But I'd seen behind their filters now, and there was no going back. The next day, I visited the restaurant manager, Mason, a college friend I hadn't seen in years. He greeted me cautiously. Lace, I didn't know it was complicated. It's not your fault. I just need the paper trail. He handed me the folder. Everything's here. Your mother insisted the charges go under your business, said you'd settle later. I nodded, thanked him, and left. In the car, I sat with the folder open on my lap, reading her handwriting. My mother's cursive was graceful, deliberate. Even her deception looked elegant. I laughed once, quietly. Not from humor, but disbelief. It hit me then. She didn't think it was wrong. She thought it was her right. That night, I placed every document into a binder, labeled each tab invoices, authorizations, correspondence. It wasn't just evidence anymore, it was a map leading somewhere I hadn't yet decided to go. At the end of the binder, I left one empty section titled Outcome. I didn't know what it meant then, but I knew one thing: it wouldn't be forgiveness. Over the following week, I noticed small changes. My mother stopped calling. My siblings texted less. Silence, where control used to live. And in that silence, I found space to think. Revenge isn't born from rage. It's born from clarity. The moment you stop defending what broke you, the plan writes itself. One night, as I was sorting through old files, I found a recording I'd forgotten about. A voicemail from my mother during a past gala. "Lacey, can you move the donor table? The press prefers a better angle of us." That line, "the press prefers a better angle of us," looped in my head. It wasn't just about money or reputation. It was about image. That's what she valued most. That's where it would hurt the most. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email. Not to her, not yet. To every venue, vendor, and partner I'd ever worked with. Subject line, "Important policy update. Account access changes." It was professional, calm, entirely factual, but between the lines it said something louder. "You don't speak for me anymore." When I hit send, I felt it. Not revenge, not yet. Just relief. Because discovery, I learned, isn't just about what they did. It's about who you become when you finally stop denying it. Planning came naturally to me. It's what I do for a living. Manage chaos, predict emotion, choreograph moments that feel effortless. Only this time, I wasn't planning an event. I was planning an ending. Not loud, not cruel, just precise. The kind of ending that doesn't destroy, it reveals. My first step was simple. Distance without disappearance. I didn't cut them off. I just became professionally unavailable. When my mother called to ask about her friend's charity gala, I smiled into the phone. "Oh, Mom, I'm fully booked this quarter, but I'll refer you to someone new." I gave her the name of a rival planner, one known for overcharging and under-delivering. Polite sabotage wrapped in courtesy. Mara's text followed 2 days later. "Hey, Lace, can you get that restaurant contact? They said you have special pricing." "I don't share vendor rates anymore. Policy update." No emotion, no justification, just policy. Ethan didn't call directly. He sent an email, trying to sound professional. "We're hosting a small investor dinner. Could Harper & Co. handle it?" I replied, formally. "Our minimum retainer is $20,000. Payment required in advance." He never responded. Boundaries, I learned, sound cold only to those who benefited from your warmth. The next step required more finesse. My mother's reputation thrived on association. Articles, interviews, social posts that painted her as a philanthropic matriarch. And much of that image rested on events I'd planned for her, quietly, behind the scenes. So I began curating my own narrative. I reached out to a journalist I'd worked with, someone who owed me a favor after a last-minute event rescue. I pitched an article. Behind the curtain, the invisible hands of event design. It wasn't about revenge, it was about visibility. I spoke calmly, honestly, about how many planners work unseen, their names erased from the glory they create. The journalist asked for examples. I gave a few, subtle ones, recognizable only to those who knew the details, my family included. When the article went live 2 weeks later, the headline trended locally. People shared it.
calling it empowering. And on my mother's social page, someone commented, "Didn't your daughter design those events?" She deleted the comment within an hour, but not before others saw.
Amelia, my accountant, became my quiet co-conspirator. Together, we began the process of reclaiming my business identity. She helped me draft formal letters to vendors, clarifying that all family-related transactions had been unauthorized and that future dealings required direct approval from me only. Each letter was professional, devoid of accusation, but collectively they drew a clean line in the sand. Mason, the restaurant manager, even offered to testify in writing, not to punish, just to confirm. "Lace," he said, "you don't have to burn them. Just stop building for them." He was right. Revenge didn't need fire. It needed absence. I started documenting everything, not for evidence anymore, but for reflection. Each entry began with a single line. Today, I chose peace over permission. And under it, the actions I took that day. Small steps toward autonomy. Canceled joint accounts. Updated business registration. Removed family from automatic email lists. Tiny deletions that added up to liberation. The breaking point came 3 weeks later when I received an invitation. My mother was hosting a charity dinner. Same venue, same vendors, even the same gold-trimmed invitations I had once designed for her. Except this time she had done it without me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the planner in me, recognized opportunity. I called Mason. He laughed softly when he heard the details. "She booked the same space?" I said, "Same night. I have a corporate gala scheduled next door." "Coincidence?" He chuckled. "You want me to connect the timing?" I hesitated for a half breath. Yes, quietly. The night of the event arrived like theater. 2 halls, 2 hosts. In one, my mother's banquet, loud, glittering, performative. In the other, mine, a clean, minimalist fundraiser for a real client. Her guests arrived first. So did mine. Then, halfway through the evening, the local press showed up. The same outlet that had published my article. They were there for my event. But the rooms were side by side. I didn't plan for them to notice the difference, but I didn't stop them either. They did. Within days, a lifestyle blog ran a comparison piece. 2 events, 1 night, when elegance speaks louder than excess. The subtext was clear. I never confronted my mother. I didn't need to. Her silence became the admission. She stopped mentioning my name in interviews, stopped asking for favors, stopped pretending she'd built her image alone. It wasn't ruin. It was exposure, slow, graceful, irreversible. If you're drawn to stories where calm turns to power, stay with us. Subscribe to Revenge Bible for more tales of justice served quietly. The night it all came together, I didn't feel triumph. I felt calm, focused. I arrived early, as always, checking every detail. Table settings, lighting, the small cues that made the space feel alive, yet effortless. This wasn't about vengeance in the way movies show it. No yelling, no public humiliation. This was art. Across the hall, my mother's dinner sparkled. Candles, flowers, an over-engineered menu. Her guests arrived in suits and gowns, expecting prestige.
She expected admiration. And yet, admiration doesn't come from perfection alone. The local press had RSVP'd to my event weeks ago. They arrived in droves, cameras ready, notebooks open. They photographed my minimalist floral arrangements, my understated centerpieces, the quiet elegance of an event that felt alive rather than staged. By chance, or perhaps by design, their lenses occasionally captured glimpses of my mother's dinner. I didn't force it. I didn't need to. Within hours, social media began to notice. Comparisons emerged organically. Next door events, one calm, one overdone. Which would you attend? The subtle beauty of this gala versus the gold-trimmed chaos next door. Who really planned these events? Behind-the-scenes talent matters. Comments mentioning my mother's name, and by extension her curated image, were polite at first. Curious, then more pointed. Her circle began whispering among themselves. The ones who once praised her hosted appearances now wondered how much she'd relied on others. I didn't respond. I didn't post. I watched. Meanwhile, my vendors began sending notes of admiration. One wrote, "Your coordination tonight is impeccable." Another, "Clients keep asking who's behind this." All of the work I had done over the years, hidden under family names, was suddenly visible. My mother called that night. Her voice was clipped, polite. "Lacey, I hope everything is going well next door." I replied simply, "It is." She didn't ask anything further. Over the next week, the aftermath unfolded quietly, but undeniably. Local blogs compared the events. Influencers discussed the difference between curated image and actual execution. Vendors and guests subtly credited me, naming Harper & Co. repeatedly. Even my siblings noticed. Mara texted, "People are talking about your event. You got real coverage." I didn't respond. Ethan called later, attempting to sound casual. "Mom said you made things complicated." I answered calmly, "I made things clear." That was all. No one was humiliated in a cruel way. No one lost money. No one was forced to admit wrongdoing. No one even forced me to confess to my mother that I had intended to Anilia's.
But for the first time, my family understood that the quiet, invisible labor they had always dismissed had real power, that I had real power. It was poetic justice in its most refined form, exposure without spectacle, consequence without violence. And as the week ended, the realization settled in. They would never take my work for granted again. Not publicly, not professionally. I had reclaimed my name, my reputation, my space. Revenge, I discovered, doesn't have to scream. It doesn't have to break people. It just has to be inevitable. And in its inevitability lies satisfaction. I closed my laptop that night, a small smile forming. I didn't gloat, I didn't rub it in. I just exhaled. The lesson wasn't for them. It was for me. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value my labor, and to enforce my boundaries with calm precision. And now, when someone mentioned my family's events, I could do so with clarity, confidence, and quiet pride. The revenge had been served, delicately but unmistakably. And in that clarity, I found peace. Weeks passed, and life returned to a quiet rhythm. The family events no longer relied on me. They fumbled, stumbled, and discovered, slowly, that their curated image, without substance, was hollow. They realized, without ever saying it, that their golden image had depended on my work, my vision, my meticulous attention to detail. And I felt no glee in their failure, only relief. A deep, settling relief that comes from finally existing on your own terms.
I rebuilt my calendar, not around their demands, but around my clients, people who appreciated me, who recognized my value. I began taking on projects that challenged me creatively rather than projects that required me to perform for approval. The stress that had been a constant in the background of my life finally dissipated. I would see my mother post photos of her events online. The captions were glowing, but the execution was lacking. I didn't correct them. I let the images speak for themselves. The gaps between her words and reality were obvious to anyone paying attention. Mara reached out a few times, tentatively. "Lace, maybe we can talk." I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because the dialogue they had denied me for years was not mine to reopen. Respect and acknowledgement were earned, not begged. And yet, in the quiet mornings when I sipped coffee at my desk, journal open, I felt a different kind of peace. I had not just reclaimed my business, my reputation, and my labor. I had reclaimed myself. I stopped seeking approval from the table I had never truly been part of. Instead, I created my own table, composed of people who valued me and work that mattered. Revenge had not been loud or destructive. It had been strategic, subtle, and fair. It had illuminated truth without cruelty, teaching lessons without malice. I realized, finally, that the only validation I needed had always been within me. And that recognition was worth far more than the applause of anyone who once dismissed me. I closed my journal that morning, sunlight spilling over the pages, and whispered softly to myself, "I am enough. My work is enough. My voice is enough." And for the first time in years, I believed it. My name is Lacey Harper, and this was how I reclaimed the narrative, because revenge wasn't cruelty. It was closure, it was clarity, and it was power. Here at Revenge Bible, we turn pain into purpose and betrayal into balance. Subscribe and join us for the next transformation.